Hey everyone, welcome to Your Stake, Your Story. We are a video series with advisors for advisors focused on highlighting the best practices of advisors in the values aligned investing space. So I'm here today with Jason Howell. Super excited to have you on. Uh,
Thanks.
Jason, actually, I had the pleasure of joining one of Jason's podcasts in the past, and I'm happy to have him come on this one. Jason is the founder of Jason Howell Company, a family wealth management firm that specializes in helping community stakeholders feel good about their money. He's a former US congressional candidate, certified financial planner, certified private wealth advisor, and chartered SRI counselor. So am excited to get into that former US congressional candidate part, but
All
I'd
right,
actually
we'll
love
do
to
it.
start earlier. Can you tell me a little bit about your early beginnings, your background, your origin story? Where'd you grow up? How'd you get started? And say a little bit about the journey that led you to becoming a financial advisor.
Sure, happy to. And thanks for having me, Gabe. Wow, long story. So I've spent most of my life here in Northern Virginia, over 30 years now. But I was born on the West Coast, so I used to be cool. I always tell people if we actually stayed where we were in California, then I probably would have been friends with the guys at Green Day, and my older sister would have been friends with Gwen Stefani, and she would have
Right.
divorced me instead of, Gavin Rosdale. But we moved, unfortunately. My parents are from the Caribbean, and so they were immigrants
Mhm.
and immigrated to California, where I was born. And
Where
so I
the
have two countries. So St. Lucia for my mom
Mhm.
and Trinidad and Tobago for my dad.
Amazing. I live right next to a Trinidadi roti place, and it's incredible. So we'll have to cover that more.
Oh, when I visit you, we're going.
Sounds good. Sorry to
Absolutely
interrupt.
going.
Keep on going.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, I was, you know, born out in California. We were there 5 years, and we moved a little bit around. And then my dad wanted to go spend some time with his father again, so we moved to Trinidad, and we were there for 5 years. And what that gave me eventually was that feeling of what an immigrant feels like when they return. And so I got back in eighth grade and we came to Virginia, and I had to figure out what shoes were the cool shoes to wear. Were there black shoes or white shoes? I didn't know you had to roll up your pants, and so I rolled them up and cuffed them because that's what you did in 1987. And I just, assimilated back into American culture. And it was really neat to have that experience because it just gives you one additional sort of social feel for others who come to this country and are blindsided by the culture. So that was a nice win, though at the time it was just a little difficult, but I was just happy to be back for sure. And so like I said, grew up in mostly in Northern Virginia and decided to major in accounting because I took accounting in high school and it seemed really easy.
Mhm.
And it wasn't even on computers. We were just doing it, on ledgers and just seemed this is easy. And
Sure.
there were 4 pages in the newspaper of accounting positions. So I said, I'll just major in this. And so I did and found out it wasn't as easy when I got to college, but decided not to quit and to go ahead and do it because I had read that most entrepreneurs start as accountants. So I'm like, oh, that's exactly what I want to do.
Oh,
And so I'll keep at it. So got through accounting, did accounting for 8 years and was not necessarily happy doing accounting for 8 years, but that's the only kind of job where I could be compensated. So I didn't leave. And on the side, I ended up working with musicians.
hmm,
And so this is the part that let me cut my teeth on actually being a manager of finances and people by working with independent musicians. I had started doing this when I was in college. I was, director of concert programming at George Mason University. And I booked my first band at a community college where I attended before I went to the university. And that just made me feel like this is the coolest thing. I picked up the phone and this cool group of guys with musical equipment and PAs just showed up. Thought it was the greatest thing, and so I did it at George Mason, and when I graduated, I did it, as a business manager and as a personal manager for independent bands. So this is what I was doing
yeah.
on the side while I was being a boring accountant, and, it was a lot of fun for me. It was my first business was Jason's Accounting and Music Firm, which is why I own jasonhowell.com because I
Very
bought it
cool.
in 1999.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great time for the dot coms.
Yeah, it was. I should have purchased cellphone.com or something that would have made me a lot of money, but at least I do own my name, so I'll take it. But after a number of years in accounting, I eventually left. I got into some staffing, and that was my first opportunity to really get into sales and learn the other side of business, especially learning that the people in marketing were told the same story, that most CEOs are marketing people. Like, wait a second, what's happening here? Total lie to me, maybe to all of us. And so anyone in business, most of the people like you are CEOs. So that's how they sell you, I think, in B school.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got that experience and that was terrific. But that, was juxtaposed with this time where we were in American US history and in financial history, which was the financial crisis. So I started there in 2006
Mhm.
and we had our crash, in 2008. I was still there. Our firm was merging with Randstad. Our office was moving. My father passed away all in 2009.
It
And
was rough.
so, whereas I used to place financial professionals in positions for a fee, full time, positions, that just evaporated. It went away. And the only opportunities there were to work with staffing folks were for part time or for hourly or temp jobs. And I didn't do temp, I did permanent.
Mhm.
And so I figured I could make zero at home and I'll go ahead and just spend some time in the house where my father was. My father, my sister, and I lived together,
Mhm.
and I just wanted to be. And so I was there. And when your father passes away, you kind of just want to be impactful. You want to be meaningful. And so I decided to finish a book I was working on. Remember, this is the financial crisis. And so as a headhunter, you're either meeting with potential clients to hire your candidates or you're meeting with potential candidates to be hired.
Mhm.
And when there's a recession, there are a lot more candidates than there are clients who are hiring. So
Mhm.
I was meeting with a lot of candidates, and these candidates were all worried whether they had a job or were already laid off from a job. They're like, Jason, I don't know what's going on, like this economy. And this was like, it was neat. It was a precursor to being a financial planner
Mhm.
because I'm sitting in a small room with a document on the desk asking what they want to do with their lives. And so, in the midst of those conversations, I wanted to encourage them. And I kept telling them, listen, this is America. We've had ups and downs before. As long as you can provide value, you're going to find a job that's going to satisfy you. And I just kept saying this over and over and over.
Well,
And I thought I should write a book about this.
yeah.
And when my dad got sick in December of '08, I decided I need to do stuff. And so I started writing it. I didn't finish it until after he passed away. It was an audiobook because Gabe, my friends were musicians. And so
Smart.
they could record, they couldn't help me publish. And so the book was called America, Still the Land of Opportunity. It's still available on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com, like $5. And that's when I learned how to do Kindle stuff, which was until 2011.
Mhm.
So for about a year and change, it was just available as like a 3 CD set.
That's
And
amazing.
it was all about,
Do
being
you
able
keep those
to
CDs in a special drawer and cherish them?
well, I only have about 4 copies of the book left, and they're in shrink wrap, so I haven't I've just kept them in the shrink wrap.
Yeah.
And, who helped me with that? Recording artist helped me record, a different one helped me order the packaging. So it was a real, like, indie rock star product, essentially. But after that was kinda done, I still had the Jones to be impactful, and that's when in 2011, when the Congress was debating whether or not to raise the debt ceiling as we're very used to now, but understand historically, that was just after the Tea Party got elected
Mhm.
in 2010. They got placed in office in January 2011.
Mhm.
By August of 2011, they were saying they weren't going to raise the debt ceiling because at the time, their big focus was taxes and spending. And that's what they were all about. And raising this debt ceiling sounded like it was making more spending happen. And what they didn't get, of course, is that spending had already happened. And that was a no go. And their historical reasons why the United States of America is the largest economy in the world, the safest place to go if there's a recession in the world. And one of them is we pay our debt.
Mhm.
And so eventually cooler heads prevailed but my congressman voted against the bill to raise the debt. My congressman was a 20-year incumbent, and I was surprised that as a 20-year incumbent, he wasn't able to wrestle the opposing party, and then he still didn't even vote for the bill that was the compromise.
Mhm.
And so I thought, as a Gen Xer, maybe it's time for Gen Xers to have more leadership and get involved here in politics. And maybe I was working on a second book, and the book was called, aptly called, it was called Patriotic Development.
Mhm.
And it was this sort of third tier. So you had personal development for you, professional development in your job. And I thought patriotic development
That's
would be
really
about
cool.
your community. I actually got it trademarked.
Yeah.
So that was fun, and I was writing a book about it, and as I'm watching C-SPAN, because that's what dorks do, I thought I should stop writing about it, and I should start doing it. And so that was the motivation to run for Congress, the, avoidance of another debt downgrade, or, yeah, debt downgrade by Standard& and Poor's if we continue to argue about the debt ceiling.
Mhm.
And so I asked my wife if it would be okay,
Mhm.
and she said yes. And for from 2011 through election day 2012,
Mhm.
we campaigned every day. I ran as an independent,
Wow.
and there were 3 other candidates: the 20-year incumbent, the Republican opponent, and the Green Party person.
Mhm.
And, we ran. This is the same time period as Obama running for his second term.
Mhm.
So I knew there'd be a lot of people voting, and we received 10,180 votes,
Woo!
and I'm counting.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool, but not enough to topple the incumbent.
Yeah.
So after that loss, for me, it was a crossroads. I had basically, kind of bet the farm on this was my next thing to do, and I lost. And sometimes you lose elections. And so I remember the day after, my wife, who had taken time off from work, was, putting makeup on, through tears. And I'm sitting there in my pajamas, at the edge of the bed, and, you know, I don't have anything to do. And so I told her, by the end of the year, this is like just, early November, I will figure it out. Don't worry, it'll be okay. And I did. I started having conversations with folks, and it wasn't until a third generation New York Life financial advisor took me to breakfast and
Mhm.
said, "What are you going to do?" That I admitted I didn't know. And he said, maybe I should meet his boss. And I told him, well, I may have met your boss 15 years ago when I turned the job down then because I was a board accountant and I was just like looking for something else to do.
Mhm.
And I got a job offer from New York Life, but my dad, still alive at that time, said, no, you're an accountant. You're going to do that. And when you're an immigrant son, you listen to your dad. I mean,
Mhm.
that's what you do, at least when it comes to career stuff. And so I did listen back then. But at this point, I thought, I did go have the conversation with his boss. I thought, I can't write the financial laws for everyone's family. I lost the election, but I can help them navigate those laws in this business. And so, no resume, with just long conversations, I eventually said yes. And I was treated so well because I was the guy that ran for Congress in the office. So they were so good to me. They thought a lot of me, or at least they treated me as if they did, and I really appreciated that. So it was a very good experience.
Wow. That is such a great story. I I would love to hear kind of that feeling that you experienced after the loss and in like moving into the transition to becoming a financial advisor. Is that something that you were really happy that you went all out, like you said, and were left like trying to figure something else out? Are you glad that you went all in into this? And is it something that you would consider doing again?
Yes, to both questions.
Mhm.
It's the most honest thing you can do if you're running for office, to go all in. You are knocking on doors, you're standing, at metro stops, you are debating a sitting congressman,
Mhm.
and you're telling people, vote for me. Let me help navigate your American dream from the perches of the Congress, from Capitol Hill. Put your trust in me. And normally congressional districts have a little over 700,000 people.
Mhm.
And so you're saying, as opposed to everyone else here, I'm the one that will navigate your wishes on Capitol Hill for the betterment of your family and the United States of America. So it's quite it can be overwhelming, but it's an honor to be able to do that, just to run. It's an honor to be able to do that. And you want to do it earnestly. You want to do it full time. You want to give it your all. You want to win. And so I can tell you it's quite the experience to lose because, your significant others are doing it with you more
Mhm.
likely than not. They're running with you. And that will be part of the catalyst if I ever run again. It's got to be a team effort. It's got to be the right time for the rest of my family.
Mhm.
They've got to be a part of it. You always hear about people who are, running for president or something because those are the elections we hear about. Oh, well, I gotta sit with my family. When they don't, it's like, well, the family decided. Like, that's honest. That's actually should
Mhm.
be honest anyway. It's a good answer anyway, because it would be a true thing to say. If
Mhm.
your family isn't into it, then it doesn't work for you to go on there on your own. And so, at the time it was just my wife and I, and she was totally into it. But like I said, she feels the loss, felt the loss in a very distinct way after, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And when you are the candidate and you lost, everyone that campaigned with you, including friends, family, and strangers, you carry that burden. And so I was very excited to figure out what I was going to do. I had promised that we would start a family the following year.
Yeah.
And so you want to start a family with a way to, earn an income. You don't get paid to run for office unless
Mhm.
you're some kind of weird person like that's running for some nefarious reason. So I had to go and do something. And it was really, really good to find an opportunity that didn't feel like I was letting everyone down
Mm.
because I had other opportunities, but I thought I can't just do government contracting. Like that's I was navigating for your family, and now I'm gonna be a government contractor. What does that mean?
Mhm.
I can't just go do a software business. I can't just I couldn't just do something that seemed random. It needed to be contiguous,
Mm.
and getting into the financial industry was part of that. Now I learned after some time in New York life that that wasn't the best place for me to do what I wanted to do for my clients. And so, I always say it took me 9 months to figure out that you could start your own firm.
Mhm.
And it took me 2 years to quit.
Mhm.
And so I eventually did leave in August of 2015 and started the Jason Howell Company for the purposes of being compensated for advice rather than particular products,
Got it.
of giving myself that opportunity to speak eye to eye with my clients on the same side of the table as my clients. And so if I'm investing money as part of the focus and I'm building financial plans as part of the focus, if the markets go up, then my compensation goes up. If they go down, then my compensation goes down. And they know exactly what I'm being paid and when I'm being paid. That level of transparency was very attractive to me. And I decided to go for it as a fee only fiduciary from the jump, which
Mhm.
is not the most profitable way to go for it
Mhm.
when you're starting a firm. There are a lot of hybrid firms that do a little of both. And I think that's probably very business savvy when you're getting started because when you're starting as a fee only advisor, you're talking about hundreds of dollars, in your first many months.
Yeah.
So unless you have some savings to fall back on, and I had a 401k that I hadn't spent yet, and a significant other that's also bringing income, it makes it very difficult. And so it was challenging those first couple of years, but with some stick to itiveness and with good business, it was really nice to be on this side of things and to be over 6 years in.
Yeah. As an entrepreneur, did you get flashbacks to the campaign days? Sure, there's a lot of similarities.
There are flashbacks. There are similarities to the campaign days, especially the kind of business that I decided to be a part of. To me, it made sense, and to my network, it made sense. I'm coming here to help you navigate the financial laws. I'm coming to sit with you to talk about what you want in life. From the beginning,
Mm.
financial planning was life planning from the beginning. And so having a conversation about what, Mr. and Mrs. would like to do with themselves, what they'd like to do with their children, what they dream about, what they worry about. Mm, These are the same conversations that you have if you're getting into politics for quote unquote the right reasons. And so these were the same conversations. It just was more one family at a time versus, huge crowds and having conversations with multiple families and saying, I will help you by passing these and getting you a flag from our, offices. No, in this case, I'm going to help one family at a time directly, personally, and get really involved and sort of on the ground in the grit. When you hear politicians talk about kitchen table budgeting, that's exactly what I'm doing, and it really creates a lot of credibility for people.
That's amazing. And then when you started the Jason Howell company, started fee only from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Were you also ESG from the very beginning, or
No.
how did that happen?
No, I had not really learned about that. I had, I had one person that asked me a question about it, and I looked up some funds or things, but didn't know a lot about it. And I think I was like a lot of financial advisors even today, where people have heard about it, experienced financial advisors have heard about it.
Mhm.
And, when you've only heard about something, you're left with the surface commentary. And so you're left with commentary like, it's kind of nascent. It's not really there yet. You're left with commentary like, well, you lose money if you do that. So if you want to do that, then I guess fine, but tell your client you're going to lose money.
Mhm.
You're left with a lot of just weird myths and things. And this is like any stereotype. People have stereotypes about men, about women, about certain races, but then you actually have a friend that's a such and such, and you realize, man, that was just a stereotype. What was I
Mhm.
thinking? You research, you get educated, and you realize that stereotypes are there for a reason, and cursory information and reputations are there for a reason, but that there is a lot more nuance. And so over the years, and I'm sure you're wondering about when the start was, the true catalyst for me was not only a couple of clients mentioning that this was something they were interested in, but it was 2020. And if you go to my LinkedIn, you'll see on my LinkedIn that I have, sustainable investing hashtag because 2020.
Mm.
I was sitting, in my home office, like everybody else during the beginnings of 2020, the spring, and then into summer at the very beginning, there's the George Floyd murder. And it just layered on top, just too much not to sit back and think, what can I do? This is a guy that ran for Congress. I thought I was going to do all these great things.
Mhm.
When I left that, I got back into my, my first love, which was entrepreneurship. Remember, I started that music firm back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
You don't make a lot of money though working with unsigned acts. So I learned why I was the only accountant working with musicians. So this was the first time that I was actually an entrepreneur and living off of it. And every entrepreneur thinks, well, one day I'll be incredibly successful and then I'll be a wonderful philanthropist. And as I sat here in June of 2020, I thought there's got to be something I can do before then. And all I did, Gabe, was just start responding to the spam emails that all financial advisors get on
Mhm.
the topic of sustainable investing. And I got on to webinars from like, Gitterman and
Mhm.
others. And I learned that the choke point wasn't the client. The choke point wasn't the fund families. The choke point for getting ESG factoring more inculcated into the financial industry was financial advisors. And that was the first webinar I was on, and I was immediately embarrassed
Mm.
because I was just like everybody else, not like the 6% as they annotated in that webinar that were actually into it. And so from there, I started having conversations from my same podcasts that I listen to. And most people who are financial advisors who might listen to this might know about the XYPN podcast. They might know about the Kitsus Advisor Success podcast. And, as luck would have it, there were these people who were featured who were very experienced in sustainable investing. And as luck would have it, people in this part of the industry are very kind. And so I reached out to them and say, "Hey, I'm starting to think about this. Can we talk?"
Mhm.
And they said yes.
Wow.
And when I spoke with them, Gabe, and you probably see this too, they were so cool. When I talked about my interests, they told me as much as they could over a period of time and on the phone. And then at the end, they're like, if you ever watched Casablanca at the end, it's like, welcome to the fight, like glad to have you.
Yeah.
And so I was a little surprised because it can also be considered a niche.
Yeah.
And, most people are very defensive about their niches, but that's not the community. That's not what it's about. It's really about something bigger than your firm. And so it was in August of 2020 that we decided to kind of go all in.
Mhm.
And we were serious, Gabe, because we put wind turbines on our website.
Whew.
That's, I don't think you can go much further than that. And so after we did that, we started having conversations with, vendors that we've all heard of, like
Yeah.
the Open Invests and Gitterman's solution,
Yep.
your solution. And it wasn't until June of 2021 where we finally, made some hard decisions on who we were going to work with and what we were going to do.
Mhm.
And Your Stake, ended up being the winner. The clear winner was yourstake.org. And we were very happy to partner with what you were doing because specifically what it did and what I still think separates Your Stake from a number of the solutions out there, it allows us as the advisors to not only perform the screens, but to actually execute the trades.
Mm.
And that's so important. It's what a couple of the other opportunities that are out there just don't allow. And that delta between making the actual trades and, finding out what you want to trade for, it's an important delta. And it's difficult to outsource that on the front end, especially as you are just getting your clients involved. And so we were really happy to use Your Stake as a solution, update our investment policy statements with documentation about Your Stake, and finally be able to comfortably say that we are working with our clients on values that are important to our firm, Jason Howell Company, but are important to them as well.
Wow. That's so flattering. I really appreciate those kind words. And I'd love to dive more. 2020 was the start of all this. At that time, you probably ran into 30 different acronyms and 500 different investment theses. How were you able to navigate this new field of sustainable investing once you committed to learning about it? What were you doing? What were some of the biggest trip ups and some of the biggest helpful guides or successes that let you become comfortable with the field?
Trip ups. I mean, that's not even part of my vocabulary. Now, I had conversations with people. I mean, I think I had conversations with you even before June 2020 potentially, and certainly before June 2021. So I just opened myself up to conversations with people that I thought would be helpful in my education, and that was so helpful. And then I decided, how can I get education around this?
Mhm.
And so I eventually bumped into the chartered SRI counselor and decided it would be better for me to actually study this now hard than to wait 5 years till I'm at the level of all these people I've been talking with.
Mhm.
Because it's one of those things where it takes some time to be able to navigate the language, like you said, the acronyms, the vendors, the players, the rating agencies, the myths that are out there.
Mm.
How are you gonna navigate all that in one fell swoop? It's difficult, but the olive branch that I found was getting an education. And like I said before, if you want to get beyond the myths, beyond the stereotypes, getting an education is the answer.
Mm.
When I had friends of mine contacting me post George Floyd saying, "Hey, what can I do about the Black community? What can I do?" My answer, just get more educated. That's the start. There's probably, you know, few things that you can just do from the jump that are going to be consistent, but you can consistently get educated. There are documentaries on Netflix that are the 13th, right? People have
Mhm.
saw a lot of that in 2020. Watch documentaries, read books, and talk to people. Everything that I did for the ESG. And so I was really happy to find Jennifer Coombs, who is the founder of the Chartered SRI Counselor designation, along with the College for Financial Planning, and was excited and decided to dive right in and committed to passing the examination before the end of 2020. And I did on December 31st, 2020.
No
I
way, I
passed
didn't
the
know that.
examination. Yeah. On that day, New Year's Eve. And so I knocked it out and was able to not only add the letters after my name, but feel really that I had gotten sort of a base layer of what the history is,
Mhm.
of the differences between ESG, SRI, impact, about the research that's been done regarding performance, whether you have to lose money or not, just the kinds of things that people don't know and they can't know because they're not necessarily committing to an education. I didn't want to be one of those people anymore. As I told you, I was. And I was motivated because of what I saw in 2020. And here's the most exciting thing for any advisor that's watching this and is on the fence about diving into this. I don't have millions of dollars. I'm just not there yet. But I manage millions of dollars, and so do you, other financial advisors. And the thrilling idea of being able to purpose millions of dollars towards the good, towards the stakeholders of capitalism,
Mm.
that says to me that I can make a difference today, not when I'm a multimillionaire,
Mhm.
but that I can make a difference personally today. And by the way, all my clients can with me, and all of my clients, almost to a person, wants to make a difference. That's the distinction that many of our clients have when they come to us. Yes, they want a financial plan for their family. Yes, they want to make sure they're okay, but they also have this extra mission. I would argue that most financial advisory clients, they want to do something bigger than themselves because they have a little extra.
Mhm.
And so they want to leave some to their kids. But again, to a person, they also want to do something for the wider community. They are true stakeholders. And that's the opportunity we have as financial advisors to cull, essentially some of the wealthiest people in the country and help them do what they would like to do, which is participate to the good of what's happening in this country and beyond.
That's amazing. You're still acting as a representative, in many ways.
Guess so.
Oh,
Guess
so
so.
does that mean were you having those types of conversations before the ESG transformation, or did your commitment to values-based investing, did that change the way you approach conversations with your clients, or is it still the same and you're just throwing that in as an add-on?
Well, I'll say this, the investment policy statement has, sustainable investing incorporated.
Mhm.
And any client that is coming to us knows that this is our investment philosophy. So, to the extent that I have to put it up front, well, we kind of did that on the website. And so, whenever a prospective client
The
comes to
wind
us,
turbines.
I mean, yeah, I told you,
Yeah.
and that's it. That's the forget CSRIC, wind turbines. So they know coming to us because we all get looked up before we get conversations
Mhm.
that this is what we're about. And we are happy with it not just being this sort of one thing. When we think about values based investing, when we think about values based financial planning, we think, yes, about sustainable investing, but we also, and this is what's unique to Jason Howell Company, we also think about family governance. And
Mm.
so family governance typically has been relegated to the 100 millionaire families, the Rockefellers, the Gateses, the Zuckerbergs. But my particular passion when I started this firm in 2015 was to bring family governance and family office style planning to the regular high net worth. Why not? And what I found in my research in that category is it is all about values. It is all
Mhm.
about passing on to the next generation what you believe in your work ethic, your standards for living, your ideas around grace and generosity and changing the world, everything that, you wanted to do when you were 22, but like you sort of maybe felt you couldn't when you reached your 30s and 40s. These are all the things that clients that come to us care about because we have the sustainable investing. They know they can have their values penetrate through there. But some people haven't even articulated their exact values.
Mm.
So our family governance process pulls that out, gets it on paper, and we end up with what we call a family constitution. Some attorneys call it like an ethical will. And
Mm.
it does annotate, yes, what our standards are, what our beliefs are, what our values are, what our aspirations are for our family and for the world. And going from there, it makes it an easy transition to say we want to do sustainable investing. And then going from there, it makes an easy transition to say we want to be proactive in our philanthropy. So my business partner, Doug Tees, who joined the firm in 2017, so just a couple years after I started,
Hmm.
he's been all in with this. I always tell everyone he's a nicer guy than me. He's a better guy than me. He has spent over 12 years on a board, a nonprofit board, helping the neurodiverse adults, find, work and employment and housing. And so, he came to the firm with these values, already embedded in him. And he is currently studying, because we're all about education here at the Jason Howell Company, for the CAP. I think it's the Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy. I think that's the acronym.
Hmm.
And so that's another one of those expensive designations, ones that take a lot of time, but it's going to be one of those education pieces that allows us to reinforce our commitment to this value structure. Yes, it's easy to kind of say and wave a flag, we do sustainable investing. Like I said, it's a niche. It could work for business. But truly, if you're going to do that from our perspective, it helps to actually help the clients identify their values and
Hmm.
get it on paper. And because we're working with the kinds of clients that all of us work with, there's going to be money left over. It helps to help them proactively document, identify mechanisms and tools for their philanthropy. This sort of, full picture of values based planning makes it really turnkey for our clients. It gets us excited about doing the work. It's not like doing accounting where it's just numbers
Does it have more
accounting.
joy?
There's a lot more joy, like the joy of financial planning. Exactly. So where's the book over here? Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, exactly.
Yep. You got it.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot more joy involved. It's very exciting. It can be very fun, not just for us as financial advisors, but absolutely for the clients. We try to keep a sense of humor as well. So it's not just drudgery.
That's great. Hey, can you tell a story or two about how you've had some clients come in and maybe they already know they're looking for sustainable investing, maybe they don't, that's uncovered in your value, but it would be awesome to hear that process of figuring out those values, leading that into the investments and the philanthropy. Yeah.
On the front end, when there was a prospective client who wants to meet with us, typically they'll book an appointment through our Calendly. And in our Calendly link, there's just a few questions. And one of them is like, how important is sustainable investing to you? And so most of the time, I'd say maybe half the time. Let's not say most. Half the time people are indifferent.
Hmm.
And that's the truth. That's no big deal. And the other half of the time, they might say, yeah, it's actually pretty important to me. And so that's a nice heads up for us
Hmm.
about, how they're coming to us and having a conversation. But I'd say the most exciting opportunity that we have been able to be a part of was a referral from a client that we are very close to, who referred, someone that they, worship with to us. And they weren't even that close, but in a sort of a passing conversation, it was mentioned that,
Hmm.
they were interested in sustainable investing. And at the time, they were kind of half, self investing through Vanguard, but they weren't, very happy with Vanguard generically. And we all know what their voting record is as far as proxy voting. And so there's reason to be a little uncomfortable with Vanguard. And I'm certain they're improving that and working on that. But at the time, it just didn't feel right. And there was a lot more to this case, right? It's not just, I do sustainable investing, come over. It's,
Hmm.
what's your wealth management process, your value stuff, all of that. So when they were referred to us and we had conversations with them, they were really, asking the hard questions. And it was important for me. I'm on the front end with the client acquisition. And so for me to have gone through Jennifer Coombs' program with the CSRIC, that was important.
Hmm.
And it was like, it really underscored like, yeah, I'm glad I'm not, Johnny come lately to this and just like, I use a few ETFs. I do sustainable investing. Like, no, it was good that I actually knew what I was talking about. It was important that we had this, broad-based values kind of planning with our business, that it wasn't quote unquote just the investing, but it was also the family constitution and it
Hmm.
was also the proactive philanthropy. So when they met with us, and they met with us a couple of times before they said yes,
Hmm.
they were able to say, yeah, this is a firm that we can attach to. And I can say that it was such a win because both Doug and I really enjoyed the experience of working with these clients where they are in life just before retirement, and they're checking all of the boxes that fully utilize the solution that we provide. Yes, we had to work with them on philanthropy. We had to work with them. We got to work with them on their philanthropy, and we still do. And so, going through what might be a community foundation, or going through setting up fiscal sponsorship or whatever else, like giving them those options, that was really fun. Of course, having them move their money from an institution that wasn't precisely focused on sustainable investing to an RIA like ours that is exclusively focused on that, and then parsing the data and saying, "This is how your portfolio has improved." I mean, that's and asking follow-up questions, and I asked you follow-up questions, I think, because I was like, "I'm not sure how to get that data, Gabe." So, I mean, that was really cool to walk through that process, and then, like I say, to kind of walk through their family constitution with their adult kids, and they met with their adult kids. When was that? I think it was Thanksgiving,
Mhm.
and they had conversations around those values. That to us, when we are fully utilized as a firm, that is so exciting because we know this stuff is good. It's just there aren't enough rooftops to sort of scream and say, "Hey, this is what you're looking for." But most of the money is with the large big box finance firms, the Merrill Lynch's, the Morgan Stanleys, the UBS's, and on and on. And they don't know all of those clients, those trillions of dollars worth of clients. They don't know, many of them, about the RIA option. And of those who might even hear about it, they don't know about a firm like ours that will provide this comprehensive view. And we use words like comprehensive and holistic so much. I try to avoid those words. And so, these different ways to poke at the same thing, which is, what are your values and how can we help you execute those? If you hadn't been able to over the 30 years of work for your life, that you'd be able to now that you're in your maybe 50s and 60s, and are just really intentional about it. That's what we do with our clients, and we're just so happy to have found a solution like yours, Gabe, where we don't have just those two poles. It's not just the philanthropy and the family constitution, but we can go into the heart of things, which is the investing, and make it happen there too.
Very cool. I'd love to dive into two things there. The first, and I'll just go one at a time. On the You're saying that people don't always know to look for RIAs and to know to look for you. Are you finding that ESG or sustainable investing as part of the marketing is able to reach some of those people that otherwise wouldn't have known to look?
I wouldn't venture that guess.
Sure.
Morgan Stanley and Merrill Lynch are talking about sustainable investing as well. And so, we compete regardless of that particular moniker. I think what sustainable investing does is it does give you an opportunity to say something more than you might have said just as an RIA. Once someone is going for independence, there may be another layer. And some people, as I said, about half don't care. And so it's not like you're going to attract every client out there because you say sustainable investing, no more so than if you said you're really good at life insurance. It's just some people don't care, but it does give you purpose. It does give you I don't know how to pronounce this very well, res de terre, I think it is, reason for living when you're having your practice. And that kind of confidence about why you're doing what you're doing, it does translate. And it does give you space to say, well, if they weren't interested in us, they didn't like our wind turbines, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't have to question who I am and what I've done. Like they don't like my wind turbines. Or if they do like it, then I can be like, great. I know what matters to you. And it makes it very turnkey to say, this is how I can provide value to these people who are coming to us. And so, in that sense, it's really about creating clarity for
Mhm.
both our clients and our firm.
Love that. What purpose is super important to you, and I love that you've built your firm around that. How how do you communicate and tell some stories, or what are some of the stories that you tell when they ask, as I'm sure many people do, what does sustainable investing actually do? What impact does it create? How am I helping? I would love to hear if you do get those questions and how you incorporate and tie the purpose to sustainable investing.
There is this concept that's in business, and, Milton Friedman talks about, stockholders and that being the biggest purpose for business. And, it's kind of silly. If you've seen the movie Don't Look Up, I think that tells a good enough story, available on Netflix. Don't Look Up. And then there's the idea of stakeholder, capitalism, which is, and I did learn this with the CSREC, but a guy with a very similar name. So see who coined the phrase stakeholder capitalism, and you'll be on point next time you're on a podcast like this. But most of the people coming to us, it's not the back end of the value of stakeholder capitalism that's confusing. It's just not. Now, it would help if you don't use a phrase that people, haven't heard or may have been a lightning rod phrase. When we talk about what we're doing, it's pretty clear. We don't have to explain it. Perhaps the only thing that gives anyone trepidation is, well, they want to do it, but then they're like, I heard that performance is an issue, and so that's the part to help them through,
Mhm.
is to help folks say, in particular, our firm in particular is, for an example, not just doing impact investing. Getting the vocabulary is important, but also getting the actuality of what you're doing is also important. Impact investing is very likely taking a hit on performance, but that's not what all of sustainable investing is.
Mhm.
And so, much like some of the institutional investing that's happening, and as the Forum for Sustainable Investing in the United States, the USIF, will tell you, about a third of all investing has some kind of environmental, social, or governance factor attached to it. That's a lot of money, by the way, $20 trillion or so. 17, actually, 17 trillion. There is not a bunch of folks in our industry saying, "Oh, let's just, make everything nicey nicey and lose money." Like, that's just not happening with institutional wealth. It's just not. And it's not happening with our firm either. And so, one of the things we do to help mitigate some of the concerns that people might have, because they're on board typically with, wanting to change the world, wanting to save the world, wanting to be a part of the good. I haven't met anyone that's not on board with that idea.
Mhm.
I have spoken to people who are concerned about some of the myths that they've heard. And so that's where being deft with your vocabulary and your understanding of it is important, and being able to speak to what they're concerned about. So for our firm, we did 30 screens through yourstake.org, broken into 5 categories. We used your technology to find out, how we could execute what our firm believed in and that clients that we work with would believe in. But then we went to another level, and we use other sources until your stake gets these embedded in there. And we looked at the list of options of exchange traded funds, for example, and we looked at the expense ratios. So how much clients would have to pay. We looked at performance history. We looked at the time that these funds had been around. So they're just generic history.
Mhm.
We looked at the volume of trading that's happening with these funds. We looked at the dollars of assets that are already invested in these funds. Again, using other sources, generic sources. Yahoo Finance will give you this. Morningstar will give you some of this stuff. I mean, it's not hard to find some of these other bullet points. And so we found these other bullet points, and then we did an additional screen on top of the screen that your stake helps us do. And we came up with the model that works for the majority of our clients. We will always keep looking at those particular funds and maybe changing some of them as time goes by. Our allocation, though, is based on efficient market theory. That's not too fancy. How many advisors do that? The way we work is based on strategic asset allocation for their goals.
Mhm.
That's not too fancy. But we, like 17 trillion of the other dollars in the United States of America, are adding 5 factors on top of what we're doing as professional investors for our clients. And that's what the conversation really, I believe, should be with people who are interested in this but are concerned. Explain to them your investment philosophy before you added factors for ESG.
Mhm.
And then add on the factors for ESG, and then they will believe that you actually have some vision of what's going on, that you understand when the Fed is speaking what he's talking about or she's talking about, the chair, that you understand what inflation means to the economy. You understand the jobs report. You understand taxes and how that might affect things. They just want to know, are you like a real financial advisor, or are you like a Birkenstock wearing such and such that decided to get into this space? We allay those concerns by speaking to, where we've come from, because we weren't born into this. We didn't do this from the jump, and what we've added to.
That's amazing. We're almost coming up on time. I got to ask this last question.
Sure.
Where do you think ESG is headed?
I think it's headed towards every other factor that investment analysts use to analyze investments. Okay. It's the kind of data that is being used on us already. If you ever study how credit reporting
Mhm.
agencies figure out whether or not to extend us credit, it's not just about, do you have money in your bank account and do you have a job? I mean, that would have been so much easier, and it would be so much easier for so many other people to get credit.
Mhm.
They're the 5 C's, and I don't even remember all the 5 C's, but I teach this at my alma mater, George Mason University. But one of them was like characteristics. What? What is that amorphous phrase? How do you get characteristics? What do you know about me? Yeah, they know about you. It's called
Yeah.
data. Capital. I didn't give you my net worth. Where did you get this information? There's a lot that is being done with us and has been done with us for many decades when it comes to data. Why does Amazon know what you're into? Why does Netflix know what you're into? Data. It's just good business, and data is just good investing. So we have been using many different financial tools, all these different theories and things, to be able to figure out how we can beat the market, how we can create alpha for our clients. And I see factors associated with environmental, social, and governance as just another layer, another opportunity to see if we can be more successful as investors than our competitors, to see if we can be more valuable to our clients than other advisors may be valuable to our clients. My argument is, at this, especially when it comes to risk, that reality is already there. It's already baked in to E, S, and G.
Mhm.
Now you can add more to that, whether or not you believe having a certain level of diversity on a board makes a difference in the CAGR for the company. You can add to that and say, if you believe that, wow, if you actually support the planet and their environment, then maybe, you'll do better business. Maybe more people will come to you. Maybe they'll create more revenue and more profit for you. You can look into that too. You can make your assessment. I don't have to defend how you make your assessment on the ESG factors.
Mhm.
The only thing that I can share that I believe, and I would say I know to be true based on how much time I've spent in the numbers world, is that this data is going to help anyone that's serious about looking into how to do better for their clients and for their clients' portfolios. And that is the future of sustainable investing.
Love the way you ended that. Jason, it's been amazing having you on. Thank you so much for joining.
You bet.
And your story is really incredible. I think it's something that a lot of people will love to hear. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me on, Gabe. I do hope people enjoy hearing the story. It's your story, right? So I do hope they enjoy it. But a continued success with everything that you're doing. Continue to enhance yourstake.org. It's a really important tool, I think, for the industry and for the profession. And I look forward to seeing what you do next.
Amazing.
You too. Bye bye.
See ya.